Bonner. Welcome back. I am so excited to be here today and officially introduce you, show you some machine quilting basics working with my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. Okay, you guys, I've shared many videos with this machine quilting ruler, with all of my machine quilting rulers, but I thought it would be fun today to take it back to the basics, talk about some of the basics you really need to know before you begin machine quilting, and especially before you begin machine quilting with my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. Now, before we get too far into this video, I do want to let you know that all of the rulers, notions, other things that I mentioned here today are available for purchase over on our website, peaceandquilt.com. So before you do any machine quilting with rulers, there's a few tools that you definitely are going to need to use. You need to have an extended base plate, you need to have a ruler foot, and if you're working on a sit-down machine, you need to make sure you have the ability to drop your feed dogs and freely move underneath your needle. Now we'll get into all of those details in just a minute. Before we do that though, I want to talk about this ruler. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to show a little bit of demo, quilt a few blocks using this mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. So the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, after I designed the regular 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, I had a lot of you asking me for something that was just a little bit smaller. The 4-in-1 is a great size, it's a larger ruler, but there occasionally are times, and especially for those of you working on mid-arm or sit-down machines, heck, I work on a long arm and use this ruler all the time. It's just a little bit smaller, so it's really easy. You can see I can hold it very easily in my hand. It just fits nicely, and it really has some fabulous shapes on it. So let's start out. What are these shapes? The ruler, of course, has a straight line. I love a basic straight line on a ruler. When I work with machine quilting rulers, I'm moving my ruler around pretty quickly. A lot of you like to use grip on the back of your rulers. Nothing at all wrong with that. I just move so quickly that I really like to have one ruler that can kind of do it all. So that's the way that I have developed all of my rulers. They definitely will do more than one thing. So you have the nice straight line here. Then we have two small little curves up here on the top. So these are great for small shapes. They're great if you want to do a little row of these little scallops, or just a small block where you need a small curve. That little curve is perfect for that. Then we have the larger curve here that's great on all sorts of different designs. Like I said, we'll hop over and show a few of those. But we also have this medium-sized curve. So this ruler is all about curves plus the straight line. Now, another thing I will mention is the thickness of this ruler. It's a little bit difficult to see here, but this ruler is a nice thick, 1/4 inch thick acrylic machine quilting ruler. So it's really strong, it's a really durable ruler. And unfortunately, I can tell you that I know from experience, I've actually hit these rulers with needles, and the rulers are so strong, they're not going to break. It might hurt your machine, but these are some really strong, durable machine quilting rulers. Now, the rulers, all of my machine quilting rulers have markings on them. We have an X through the center of this ruler that indicates a 45-degree angle. So if you want to quilt a block with a 45-degree angle, you can easily line this diagonal line up with the side of your block, and then it'll hold your ruler. If you have that line straight, this side is going to be a 45-degree angle. I can quilt right along that without doing any extra measuring. Or when I'm marking, I can use those nice marked lines on there to know that I'm keeping a nice 45-degree angle. The other markings that I do like to point out on my machine quilting rulers are the measurements. Now we'll get into this a little bit more, but the measurements on my rulers all start at 1/2 an inch. But it's really at the point that you think should be a 1/4 of an inch. It is a 1/4 of an inch. It's a 1/4 of an inch from the side of the ruler. But back up. I have created all of my machine quilting rulers so that the measurements are based on your needle position. Now, how do I know where your needle position is? Most machine quilting ruler feet, you need to make sure that you have a ruler foot to do this. Most machine quilting ruler feet are designed so that the outside of the circle is a 1/4 of an inch from your needle position. So if your ruler foot is truly a 1/4 of an inch from that needle position, you can use these rulers, which it should be, and easily use these for your markings. Eliminate a little bit of marking. We'll get into that and talk all about that, but this is such a fun ruler. I can't wait to show you more all about it. Let's get stitching. Machine quilting rulers are different from rotary rulers. Machine quilting rulers are about twice as thick as rotary rulers. Mine are all 1/4 of an inch thick, and the markings generally start at 1/2 inch. The markings on the machine quilting rulers are measured from the needle, so you can measure distances between stitching lines with the ruler instead of having to mark out every single line. Machine quilting rulers can be used on longarm machines as well as domestic, mid-arm, or sit-down machines. If you're using the machine quilting rulers on a longarm machine, I highly recommend using an extended base plate around the base of your machine. This will create a larger working space and enable you to hold the ruler flat and flush up against the ruler foot. When using the machine quilting rulers on a domestic machine, you will need to make sure you have a ruler foot. A ruler foot is available from your machine quilting dealer, and aftermarket ruler feet are also available. You'll also need to make sure that you're working on a machine that has the ability to drop the feed dogs, and there's at least 1/4 inch clearance all the way around the foot. Additionally, when working with rulers on your domestic machine, I highly recommend a grip material on the back of your ruler. We have this available on our website, pieceandquilt.com. This can also be used when working on a longarm machine. The grip material on the back of the ruler helps the ruler grip onto the fabric and stay a little bit sturdier. Now, in all of my videos, I'm not always using grip. That's because I move my ruler so quickly. That does not mean that you don't have to use grip or you can't. I highly recommend it. The rulers that we will be using here are the rulers that I have designed, and they are designed for machine quilting. Since these are my favorite rulers, that's what I always recommend. However, most machine quilting rulers can be used in the same manner. You can use the markings on the machine quilting rulers instead of marking out every single point to point. You can pick up the rulers, plus I also recommend picking up my book, Visual Guide to Creative Straight Line Quilting. In that book, I actually walk you step by step through the basics of machine quilting with rulers, plus there's 60 awesome designs teaching you how to machine quilt with rulers. Now, let's get stitching. I'll start out by using my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitching in the ditch all the way around the outside of the block. From any of the lower corners, I'm going to stitch a curved line from there up to the top, from the top back down to that bottom corner. From that bottom corner, I'm going to adjust my machine quilting ruler so the first marked line intersects the center of the block. I'll stitch a curve up to that center point, adjust my ruler, and stitch back down to the opposite corner. I'll start out by using my blue Mark Beacon marker and a rotary type ruler. I'm going to mark a T through the center of my block, and then also an X. Now I'm ready to begin stitching. I'll start out by stitching in the ditch all the way around the outside of my block. When I get back to where I started, now I'm going to adjust and use the medium curve on the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler. I'll stitch a curved line into the center, then when I get back out to the outside of the block, I'll travel again along my ditch to the next marked point. I did choose to stitch in the ditch around this design first, but you could ultimately just use your traveling stitch as the stitch in the ditch if you would like. So I'm going to repeat this process, stitching from point to point, from the outside of the block into the center, using the straight line and coming back out to the outside. I'll continue that pattern all the way around on each of those points, creating, of course, an orange slice design. Once I've stitched all those, then I'll complete this design by misting away those marked lines. I'll start out by using my blue Mark Be Gone marker and a rotary type ruler. I'm going to find the center on all 4 sides of my block and mark an increment that's 1 inch in from the outside of the block. From there, I'm ready to begin stitching. I'll start stitching in the corner, and I'm going to stitch an angular line to that first marked point. Then I'll adjust my ruler and stitch to the next marked point. From there, I'll continue on to the opposite corner. From there, I'll adjust my ruler and repeat that process, coming back to where I started, stitching point to point. When I get back to the top of the block, I'm going to stitch in the ditch along the top of the block. When I get to the opposite corner, I'm going to adjust my machine quilting ruler, repeat that process, stitching point to the opposite corner. From that bottom corner, then I'm going to again stitch up to that bottom center marked point. From there, I'll adjust my ruler again and stitch another line going back up to that opposite corner. From there, I'm going to adjust my machine quilting ruler. Actually, I'm going to switch to my mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler, and I'm going to use the largest curve and stitch point to point curves. So from the upper, just point to point, working my way around those points. Now, when I come back to that point at the top center, I'm going to adjust and use the medium-sized curve on the mini 4-in-1 machine quilting ruler and stitch point to point curves around that box that I created in the center of my block, coming back to that point where I started. When I get back to that point, then I'll complete this section of this design by stitching back up to that top corner. From there, I'll complete this quilting by stitching in the ditch the remainder of the way around the outside of the quilt block.